with it. And start with a geometry, make a grid. Getting an early start today. Might be a bit of a speed run or a quicker stream. And maybe just do this mountain to get like a bit of displacement. I feel like this shading is not really showing up that well. Do like subdivide. All right. Maybe we'll try another layer. Okay. That should be good. So, gonna be doing this kind of like fungus or kind of like little algae or something like that propagation across this. And it's going to be mixing a few different ideas and stuff like that I had. So like doing the find shortest path stuff that I was doing on Friday, with like the algae, that kind of stuff. Be mixing and matching a few different things. So I think I can do maybe VDB from polygons. Where is it? There's too many of them. And just do density mode or whatever. I'm gonna use it to scatter points inside of this. We have this, just get rid of this other stuff. So it's just randomly full of points. And then what I want to do here is basically bias the distribution so that there's a lot more points at the top of the tube and fewer at the bottom. So if I just look at this color, set it equal to something that's relative to the bounding box, rel b box. You just do 0 for the primary input, and then the current point position of each point. We do that. Jabram, how's it going? Doing a quick start today. So if I look at the green channel or the Y component, you can see we have a gradient that's just starting 0 at the bottom and 1 at the top. So that's pretty useful. If I just do .g, you can extract the green channel. You can do Y as well. They both, it means the same thing. It's just different ways of referring to a different component of, I mean, it's different ways of referring to the same component of a vector. Like red, green, blue, X, Y, Z. It's referring to the same slots of like the 3 components. Julian, how's it going? So this is our gradient, just 0 to 1 for the points in the tube. And we can do another color. This one's going to be a random value based off of the point number. And then if you don't want it to be 4 months already, thank you for continuing your tier 3, the God tier, for 4 months. So we have a, yeah, we're getting back into a little bit of a technical kind of stream. I'm gonna be doing like a procedural growth kind of animation. I'm gonna be building something using the find shortest path stuff from Friday. Like a little fungi algae kind of thing, and then trying to propagate it, growing across this little mountain path, or I don't know, terrain, I don't know what it would be, just a little surface. All right, so we have color is being set to a random float. Just make sure it's a black and white value, or like a single component, call it a scalar or float. And then we can compare the two of these numbers. So this one, I'll just rename it to be more clear as height. And then this one, we'll just call it maybe a threshold. So we're getting rid of the color and just storing those in variables. And then if I set the color and take a look at the height, and if it's greater than this threshold, it looks like points have been deleted, but just because I'm setting them black and my background is black, they just kind of disappear for a little bit. But basically what this is doing is most of the points at the bottom will be black and most of the points at the top will be white. So because we're comparing this purely random number against the gradient or the relative height of the container, we get that effect. So if we want to actually delete the points, you can just do if this. Ruby Yachts, how's it going? You might be able to get away without comparing this to 1. Let me see what happens. You just do the remove point function to delete point. It looks like it works. So basically if this evaluates to 1, that also means true. You could flip it around. And then I kind of have what I was looking for. We'll go back to the dark background. So basically this is just a way of deleting most of the points at the bottom and keeping most of the points at the top. And you can do you have some control over it. For example, with this height, if we make it like a power of itself, you kind of do like a gamma correction with it. Could just call this gamma. So I'll make the parameter, and now as I is it working? So as I increase this, it's kind of like a contrast of just how biased I want these points to be towards the top of everything. I might try something like this, and maybe some less points. Kind of something like, maybe something like that is pretty cool. And then I can do connect adjacent pieces and set this to adjacent points. So if you set this to adjacent points, you have kind of the plexus effect that people did in After Effects or all that stuff. And you can build some structures and stuff like that pretty quickly with it. So if you double click on it, basically this stuff on the left here is when it's set to adjacent points mode. And it's basically everything is happening inside of this one wrangle right here. So if you're interested in doing some stuff with arrays and for each and stuff like that, you can investigate inside of this node and just look at the stuff going on at this left branch. It's pretty simple. So this little structure right here could do different seeds to get different results. Going to be using it to branch some things off. If I can do a sort node, then I'm just going to sort everything by y or by the height. So the point numbers should now be starting 0 at the bottom and incrementing with the height. We just go large. Point numbers might be a little bit easier to see. You can see bypassing, turning it on and off. The bottom point starts at 0 when we enable this sort. So then I can do a group points. This gets all the points by default. If I just type in 0, then you can see it's just getting the bottom point. So this is going to be the start point for my find shortest. You can just get the start, do from any start to each end. Cool already. And then exclamation point start to say everything excluding the start point. So we have a little bit of I don't know, fungi, algae. Could be like coral or just a little plant structure or something like that. There's other ways of doing branching stuff or whatever like this. You could do it purely in Vex. You do it doing the L system. Was bashing this kind of stuff out in the Houdini battle when I was like just making really quick patterns or whatever. This is going to be a procedural growth kind of animation, so I'm going to make one of these little plants, propagating it across a surface like this, and then using Vex control like a growing kind of propagation of it or effect of it, like spreading, infecting the surface or something like that. So I'm doing this just to generate my structure, and then I'm going to be looking into kind of animation now. But yeah, this, if you wanted to, you could build out more controls or whatever. Like you could make a little HDA or OTL or something like that that would be like just a little plant generator or something like that. Then depending on the style or the shape you want, you might, could be cool to like resample subdivision, and you kind of have like, I don't know, some splitting, a bit more interesting. Organic. Art Nouveau. All right. And then, is this the famous tire? This is not the famous tire burnout stream. This is purely Vex kind of growing effect. So I'm going to be growing a bunch of little kind of like algae or little structures across this plane or the deformed grid over time. But yeah, the infamous or famous tire burnout is still being worked on. I did a little bit of work on it yesterday afternoon. I was getting these lamps and stuff looking a little bit better, and then just I was still refining the lighting and everything around it, even the ripples. Like the lights are looking a little bit better. Yeah, I need to add animation to have the brake lights turn on and all that stuff. I did a bit of work too on just the glowing of like the smoke. It's starting to look a little bit better. But yeah, it will be pretty polished, hopefully. Still need to do a HD high quality render. Daul, thank you. Yes, there's been a big push for that one over a few months or something like that. So yeah, we're just building, this is kind of like a standalone stream today, focusing on Vex, procedural animation using Vex. You sure about that angle? The whole point of the burnout is to show off all the smoke. I think the angle is pretty cool. I've been thinking about doing some other camera angles, possibly building it out into like a little edit or something like that. But yeah, I think it's working pretty well. Yeah, it could be cool to do it like a 3/4 shot, kind of like an isometric perspective or something like that. Vishalp, Vishalp FX, how's it going? All right, so he's just building this quick little structure at the start of today. Just starting with the tube, converting it to gas or VDB fog, filling it with points, and then this right here is like basically pulling points by height. So this is some quick code to compare a random number against the height of each point, so that we only have a few points left at the bottom, but we want to keep the majority of the points at the top. And then I have this gamma control that I was doing, so like if you really want to bias more points at the top, you can do it. This is doing the plexus effect, connecting by proximity, sorting by height. Could just call this plexus. This is like the After Effects plugin or whatever. Everyone was doing it for 5 years ago or something like that. And then this one is sorting the points by height. So we have grouping point 0 at the bottom or the base, and then find shortest path to get stuff growing from the bottom to the top. And then just doing this to resample things. So in the past, I did this carve node to animate growth. Whoop. But I think that there is a little bit of kind of issues with it. So as I play this animation, you can see that the total number of points is kind of changing, or the point order. These numbers here are flickering. They're just not consistent over time. So that could be an issue if you want to do like retiming. Like I want to basically just have a number that's going to control how much these are growing over the surface. So if I don't want to have like popping or interpolation issues with this point order changing. So the carve node is kind of trashed for this method. I'm gonna be just doing something in Vex to fix that. So up here, if I add the curve view attribute, that's useful. It's just a 0 to 1 number for each point along the curve. You control click here and visualize it. You'd see basically from the base to the tip, curve view is normalized just 0 to 1, kind of like a UV coordinate. Wow, how's it going? It's terrific. So yeah, we're building a quick kind of Vex-based programmatic or procedural growth system. Just making these plants, and then it's going to spread or animate growing across this surface. Poggers! Cooking up a little broth of a poly soup of algae. I have these little seaweed things. I'm animating them growing. I can do, I think, the prim UV function. So this, you can use it to get any attribute. I'm going to use it to get a position along these curves to update them. It's a cooking show. Cooking with Houdini. So 0 to get this primary input. Do E to get the position. Prim num, that's basically the current primitive number of the point that it belongs to, the curve that it belongs to. If plant grow equals true. This is the pseudocode. And then this last number here is the primitive UV coordinate. So because we're dealing with curves, only the first number of this is really valid. Like the rest of them I could leave at 0. If you just add 0.5 for the first component. Seagull Rush, how's it going? I just need to set this, the result of the variable into the point position. So if I just set this to 0.5, we move all of the geometry to the midpoint, to the midpoints of each curve that they belong to. If I use the curve U, then they are just not moved at all. It's just reading and writing the same point position, basically, based off of this curve view. Learning bit by bit. I'm doing all right. I'm excited to move on to some fun, interesting stuff. Just like a carve extract. It's kind of like the carve extract, but the biggest advantage right here is that I can multiply this. So like if I do multiply by 0.25, then everything is just occupying 25% of the entire length of their paths. And then if I add a parameter to it, then this could be length. Then I can animate them growing. I learned today. I did a learning. So the big advantage here is that if we look at the point numbers, these ones are kind of dancing or they're not consistent. We look at this frame and there's 789 points. We move it and then you have over 1,000 points. So this one, this way of doing it, is just sliding or deforming it along itself. And you never create or delete points. So if you're interpolating, retiming animation of this, or just blending or any kind of procedural, just giving it a 0 to 1 number of growth, it can blend between these positions a lot easier. If that makes sense. Like, could do just a quick example of it. If I just put in maybe $t divided by 32, show a 5-head moment right there. So just doing a growth rate like this. If I do the same thing over here without looking at the points or anything like that, you can see the results look pretty much the same. But if you go to retime it, just with the time blend classic node, change it to speed. You want to go at like 1/10 of the speed. You can see that this is having some issues with the blending or interpolation. But over here, it's perfectly fine and 100% precise. Do you guys work with OBJ sequences? I'm trying to export to a Limbic from Blender. I'm getting weird issues. Something's wrong with Autodesk apps then, so even though I would try to use a Limbic if possible. It's the best for keeping like subframe interpolation, even kind of like I'm showing here. So you can see even doing different times, blending between, because the point order and stuff like that is changing on the carve method. It's just a bit trashed. I mean, if you do an OBJ sequence from Blender and the topology is the same and everything, you should be able to convert it to Alembic with Houdini, or you can bring it in using the Houdini if you just do, like, this is an OBJ sequence that you have. You just do $F or something for the sequence number. But you might have, a lot of software packages aren't built to export OBJs in sequences. So you might need to write a script or something like that in Blender. Mech 94. Approach the growth by offset. It depends how you're gonna select your main branch, but if you want to offset things, you could just add noise or something to this curve view. We take this curve view and add a random number based off of the curve. Curve would be the same as the primitive number. Looks like I have some issues with the bottom. I think my multiplication, I don't want to do a plus. I want to just scale it by that. So instead of offsetting through addition, you want to modulate through multiplication. You might want to do like an attribute like the length, or you'd need to do maybe if you measure and extract the perimeter, then you're getting the length, and you could have the longer stuff grow faster, but you just need to play around with multiplication, I think, or offsets through addition and some stuff like that. It would get pretty math heavy, but it would be a fun thing to investigate. All right, so this is just explaining the blending and why this carve no good. All right. So we have this growing happening. Could do, instead of just $T for the length, I could just do a fit function, $F. And then my start frame could be 1, my end frame 24, and remap that from 1 to 24 to 0 and 1. So basically, I will know from 0 to 1 second, or 1 to 24 frames, the growing animation will take place. And then at this point, I think we're going to want to write out or cache out this geometry. I'm just going to go into my streaming archive, the vault of files, and make a new folder, working directory for today. Was this the 20th? I think so. Usually I just do a scenes directory inside of whatever folder, like a project structure or whatever. This will just call it like algae growth in 1. And then I can do an alembic ROP. And maybe this will just be like plant 01. So my alembic ROPs, I usually use this $OS, this the operator string, the name of the node essentially. So this will get put in my scenes one directory above the scenes, so just the main folder of today's date. It will make a Alembic ABC directory, and then this Alembic file will be plant 01. So if I wanted to make more plants, I could just make copies of this node, and because the node name keeps just incrementing every time you make a copy of it, the same stuff would happen in the directory. Go frame range. And then I know this is going to grow from 0 to 1 over 24 frames or 1 second. So I can set it up like that. I should just be able to do save to disk. And it exists. It's a small file, but it shouldn't be too much data. So now if I use an Alembic node, I can bring in this cache. Just usually do copy parameter, reference the output file path. If you do view dependency show for selected nodes, you could visualize this expression. It's pulling in just the same output file path and using it to read in basically the same file that it generated. So the Alembic file structure or mechanism is really useful because you can see as I just delete the expression for the frame, but even the subframe information here, it's smart enough to interpolate the animation between subframes or like decimal values because the point count is fixed. If I do the same thing here again with this carve, just update the expression to match and overwrite my cache, and I try to do this. Because the point order is changing every frame, Alembic is basically giving up and saying, I can't interpolate a valid position because the point order is trash. So that's why I was spending or so concerned about keeping the point order the same and rebuilding the carve sop with an attribute wrangle, essentially. When we're growing these plants on the surface, it's going to look pretty scuffed if stuff is like stepping or jittering, like not growing at a smooth subframe or just a smooth motion. So that's the reason to do that. How are your nodes coming by their predefined colors? For me, I have to drop a node and then color it to make it visually distinct and stuff. There's a Python script that I'm running in my Houdini directory. There's in whatever Houdini usually preference directory on Linux, it's like your home directory and then Houdini 18. And then within that, there's a scripts directory. And if you have a on-created Python script, anytime you make a new node, this Python script will be called. So inside of this, I basically have a bunch of like checks to see if I'm making an Alembic ROP, and to color it, set the default parameters or to color it or whatever I want to do to that node. That's the same thing that I have with the null nodes that I make. Just have some shortcuts and some functions and stuff like that to do like point counts or things is all do that. The directory with the in file. Yeah, it's the same directory that your environment file is in. It's your Houdini preferences directory. And then just keeping the scripts will be, you might have to create it or it might exist in there. And then in my Python directory of that, I have some other things for making the flipbooks there's some shelf tools and stuff like that that I have, but it's a different topic for a different day. This is the wrangle you're interested in seeing, Seagull Rush. So I've assigned a curve view when I resample. So that's just each point's position along the curve, going from 0 at the base and 1 at the tip. And then this will just be like slide points along curves. Can't read it. Does this help you? So basically, frame UV can retrieve any attribute interpolated across the geometry. So 0 is saying this primary input, the index number 0, give me the interpolated position of the current primitive number or the current curve the point belongs to. And then I'm just scaling the curve view position that gets assigned through the resampling by this slider. So over time is just sliding all of the points along the curves that they belong to. Just cache out this again, and then do this. So with these alembics, when it brings it in, this is actually bringing stuff in as this alembic delayed load primitive. Or when I middle mouse button on it, you can see it's just like it's very similar to a packed primitive, but this is called a packed alembic. It's a very similar idea as packed geometry. Instead of basically when you do packed primitive, it's usually referring to another geometry in your Houdini scene. There's also packed disk primitive that's more similar to what a packed alembic is. But the nice thing about this, if we look at our kind of valuable intrinsics, they have an ABC frame. This is actually a bit confusing because this is a time in seconds, even though it's called ABC frame. But as I change the frame that I'm loading, you can see that this intrinsic changes. You could kind of use that yourself. If I do a copy, just move everything over by 1, get rid of that template. Move everything over by 1 unit each time. We have 9 plants, 9 packed alembics. And then if I do a primitive wrangle, then I can just manipulate that ABC frame myself. How would you make curves crawl a mesh surface? Also, how do you scroll the numbers like that? I can't, the crawling a surface would be a different topic. It's pretty easy. You might be able to find some instructions or stuff. The easiest way would just be to ray the curves onto a surface to project them. Would be cooler ways of doing it, but I don't really have time to. It would be a different topic. But you could see here, if you just ray everything to a sphere, then you have them kind of growing along a sphere instead of that. The creep sop would be cool as well. You can even do primitive UV stuff to switch coordinate spaces to move from like world space to NURBS space, very similar to like a creep sop. Yeah, it could be an imported mesh. And then the number scrolling, were you talking about this? So you just do middle mouse button, and then if you move things left or right, you get this parameter ladder that you can move back and forth to go at different precision, kind of like increments. So you could adjust things by tens, adjust things by 100s. For parameters that aren't integers like that, like if you're adjusting a scale, maybe you want really high precision or whatever. It's a really useful Houdini UI thing. Like other, I think Nuke has a similar kind of thing you can do. But yeah, having that like nice ladder of precision or whatever is really useful for quick changes without having to type or whatever. Like, type in decimals and get out a calculator or whatever. So with this primitive wrangle, we should be able to update this ABC frame intrinsic ourself. Nuke is the cursor location with the up and down arrows. It's poop. Yeah, the Nuke UI in general is like a little bit worse than Houdini, and I feel like it used to be better, but the changes Houdini has made in terms of wiring, like holding the Y to cut and do stuff like that, it's kind of surpassed Nuke capabilities. You have a lot of cool things you can do in it now. So we can adjust this, I think, just using set from intrinsic. Nightmare Cheese, how's it going? Getting into the codes today, getting into the depths of the scripts. So I've modeled this little plant, and I'm gonna animate a bunch of them growing across like a surface grid up here, like spreading or infecting the surface. So with this set prim intrinsic, you just do 0 again to refer to myself or the incoming geometry. This next argument is the intrinsic you would like to set. So we want to be modifying the ABC frame, and just type it in, I believe. And then the last argument is just the primitive you want to set, the primitive number. So if I just do @primnum, that should be good. And I think I'm also missing the value that I want to set it at. I think that gets set last. Let me just try like 0.5. It works. You would see as well, setting it is also changing the actual frame that we're loading these in. So I can do random number based off of the primitive number. Oof. I think I just need to make sure that this is generating a random float value. Otherwise, it doesn't know what kind of data type to generate a random number of. It might be doing a random color, like a random rotation, or just different data types. That's why it was complaining. But yeah, so you can do different just random points of the growth. And then if I wanted to, I could have like add the time, maybe time divided by 25. So they're all growing at the same rate, but they're offset randomly by the primitive number. Can you use expression age? You can. Yeah, if you wanted to. I'm getting ready to get into the growth process. If I wanted to with a pop network, could just start with maybe a circle. Do it on the ZX plane, so it's like a ground plane kind of vibe. Then I think if I do polygon open arc, this way the particles will only be generated like on the edges. If you close it, then it will be on the surface or whatever. The difference between age and life. Age is the time in seconds that it's been alive. Life is a fixed number that is just how long it's allowed to age for. So once age exceeds life, it gets deleted. Basically, age increments every time step to show how long it's been alive. Just like us, very much so. All right. So I'm doing this to open arc to basically only have the particles get created on the edge. Yeah, if you you do deep reading about a particle system, it's very much the circle of life. Things are born on a birth frame, they age, and then they exceed their life. September, how's it going? We're in the Vex vibes today. So if I just do $T on this circle, then it grows over time. But like we've all been talking about with the age, just control middle. You can see here the age is higher at the center because they've been alive longer, or they've just existed for a longer period of time. Just get rid of that visualization. So if I look again at this spreadsheet here, I don't know what's up with all this NaN business. A bit scary, but so you see the age, every frame is just adding the current time step to it, and life is the fixed number at 100. Is the age, the life is just set on your emitter. You could add randomness or stuff to it if you want. But I think what I can do here is like copy to points, get my plants, put them onto the points. Just making them really big. Just do maybe a transform in this case to shrink them. You worked with Karma. I tried it out a little bit, so it's just CPU based as of right now. So it's just, I prefer to use Redshift with GPU rendering, so it's a bit faster if you're just using a single machine. But I think they have plans to eventually support they're eventually going to support GPUs with it. I think they've talked about that, but for the time being, I haven't really gotten too much further with it. Joao, you did the plunge into Redshift. Welcome to the Shift crew. I think it's either that or Octane or just any GPU render. It's just makes it a lot more enjoyable to render on a local computer if you're not like on a super powerful machine, because it just takes a lot of the weighting out of the equation. So I should be able to set this intrinsic. In this case, I could run it over points. I can still set a primitive intrinsic even though it's running over points. We basically have the same amount of points and primitives, so you could use either one to run over. I'm switching it to points because I want to use the age attribute from this particle sim. So I might have made too many plants, but you can see over time, based off of the age of time in seconds, the plants are growing more so in the middle than in the outer areas or whatever. We want to make that a little bit cleaner. I think I can take my circle, and if I just do a trail to connect as mesh, then every frame will get the distance or how much this is expanding or growing. So over time we're filling in the space instead of getting the stepping. So you could see even doing it this way, you get an interesting things in the center are growing and spreading out. This is pretty cool. We want to kind of using these like they're instances almost. So the animation gets automatically interpolated and all that cool stuff. I might go in here and just decrease the birth rate. It's just doing maybe too many of them. It was a bit slow. Could make them a bit bigger, maybe. And then they're all lined up on the same axis, so they're all rotated in the same direction. So what I can do is do an attribute randomize before they get instanced or copied onto the points, and just change the normal direction and set this to direction or orientation to get a better randomness. But now they're all like rotated randomly, 0 or 360 degrees for all components. We just want to rotate them but keep them all pointing upwards. We should be able to create the up vector to save us from this. We'll do up, set the size of it to three components, and I think sometimes I always mess this up. So I think we want to swap the normal and the up to have this happen properly. Oof. So I've done something wrong here. I think the big thing I want to change is you want these plants or your template geometry to always be rotated 90 degrees to be looking along the z-axis. So if I do this, I could do it maybe with a tube. Double check. You generally want your for the copy SOP coordinate system, you want it to be aligned along the z-axis, and then it will make kind of the rest of your life a bit easier. Now it looks like my stuff is growing upwards. This current age like isn't applied yet, but then once I apply this, something else has happened. Particle growth today. Yeah, we're doing some procedural growth. I've just used a particle system. Someone was doing a suggestion to use the age attribute. I'm eventually going to be splitting this to fully procedural without a simulation. I'm just trying to sort out some orientation bugs that I'm running into right now. I don't know how this I see what I did. Your geoflow. Yeah. So I was moving stuff around too quickly. I was copying a bunch of copies. I was lost in the inception land. So I just wanted to rotate the base individual copy 90 degrees. So now we're spinning them randomly, but using this up, then flipping them between N and up, swapping them to get random rotations. You could do this all with one line of Vex or whatever, but I'll generally try not to do too much stuff in Vex, just because, especially streaming, like I'm only trying to do the important stuff that you can't do with other nodes. You could, if you wanted to, you could like be a madman and do everything in one Vex node, but just gets a bit Vex, Pog you, Dean or Daddy, good to see you in here. So yeah, we're just using the age of the particles to increment or seek to a different frame of the Alembic animation. So that's pretty cool. Now we're just going to, looks great visually when it's growing. Yes, it's a pretty flexible method for doing it. We have complete control over the animation, like time, just using the ABC frame, and then Alembic is smart enough, like I was showing earlier, to interpolate between frames, so you get smooth animation or smooth growth or whatever. It looks buttery smooth. So I can take my mountain now, and then I think if I do another, maybe I'll just do this distance along geometry. You screenshot your network. Feel free, go ahead for it. You could do the clip, Twitch clip. Do whatever, ripping stream copies. Stream snipe me. I could do a distance. If I was using Alembic, the RAM at render time was insane. So if you keep everything as a packed Alembic, it should be pretty efficient. You might, depending on how complex your scene is and stuff like that, you might run into issues. Since it unpacks it at render time, it might have gotten, they might have written, I mean, it depends on what renderer you're using and stuff like that. So I'm not sure how well this would work with Redshift. With Mantra or Karma and the USD stuff, they might have rewritten some of it to be a bit more optimized. But yeah, it would be something to check. You might end up maybe like kind of doing some quantization or like snapping so that you're not making too many unique copies. Does packed disk sequence support interpolated frames? I don't think that their subframe interpolation works as well as Alembic. You could try it yourself and do some investigation, but when I was preparing for this today, it's just my brief reading or whatever seemed like Alembic was the more preferred way to go for it. Things might have changed since the information I was reading or whatever. So again, with this sort, just sort by proximity, so we can make sure that point number 0 is at the middle, or if I wanted to, I could move it around. So when I do this distance, I can just type in 0 as the start point, and then control middle mouse button here, and you could see we're getting like a gradient. Basically, wherever I move proximity to point, that's going to be my starting point for this attribute. So now I have a distance. It's just how far it is from that point number 0. Learned a new handy node here. Yeah, the distance along geometry is pretty useful. It's a newer node. Again, I think it's something, if you are really curious about Vex, you can go inside and really poke around and see how they're doing things. I guess that they made a new Vex function for it, so it's not too confusing or whatever. Rewatch the VOD. Gotta go to sleep. Of course. Thanks for chilling. Seagull Rush. But yeah, if you're ever curious about screenshotting or getting parts of the network, I think with the Twitch, like, even though this is live, you should be able to skip back. Like, the VOD is constantly updating or whatever. So if you really need to, you should be able to take a step earlier if you missed something. All right, let me just clean this up a little bit. Going to be update BBC frame intrinsic, and this one here I'm going to be remapping the distance attribute. So this is generating the distance, the output attribute, and then here I'm just going to keep using color, set it equal to the age, I'm sorry, the distance. You'd see 0 where it's close to point number 0, and then it just keeps going. It even goes above 1. I generally turn this on, the correction toolbar. So this way, if you have values like overexposed values or attributes that are going above 1, you can underexpose your viewport or whatever to investigate them. You switch between, kind of just a nice feature. So right now we're just purely taking the distance and putting it into the color. One thing I can do is offset time with it, or not necessarily offset time, but just offset the distance value using the time. I think if I subtract time, you can see it's kind of expanding with some kind of spreading ink or something like that. And then these numbers now you can see we're getting some negative numbers. So one thing that I probably want to do is a fit function to remap things. Fit. We want to take the results of that operation. The source range will be from 0 and 1, and then I'm gonna flip it around so its output is from 1 to 0. So now we have this number that's spreading out. When it gets to 1, it stops. Before it starts growing, it will always remain at 0. It won't go beneath 0. So I'm doing a few things with this fit function. It's acting as a clamp to keep stuff between 0 and 1 and not exceed that range. And then I'm remapping, or kind of inverting the range. So instead of starting at 0 and going to 1, it's starting at 1. I've offset this in a weird way with the subtraction, but it's just flipping the operation around a little bit. You already could probably see where this is going, so this will be the time in seconds that things can grow using. We wanted to make sure we don't start with a growth. I could add an additional offset of maybe like 0.5. It looks like I need to add it instead of subtract. Maybe starting 1. Then it will just start kind of like an empty canvas, or a dark, everything is at 0 at the first frame. Joao, yeah, thanks for stopping in. Good luck with the Redshift journey experiments. Attribute noise added to dist. Yeah, we could do that. Just gonna subdivide this one more iteration to get something a little bit more interesting. Yeah, so if you want to break this up, you can do attribute noise to break up or move this distance around. Oof. 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 Alright. Oh no. Oh no. So we should be able to get it back pretty quickly. Alright, we're back. We'll just save this, the same directory, but just increment to another version number. So I think this thing sometimes gets angry when I left the default value at color that it was trying to override, but I set it to 1 dimension, so those data types clashed, whereas colors should be 3D. So if I set it to dist before changing the signature, I think I wouldn't have crashed. You can see now it's doing what I was trying to do. You maybe want it to be a centered noise. Like, if you don't center the noise, you could see it's only eroding the gradient. If you center it, then in both directions it will be spreading out or in or whatever. Then you have the element size that's handy to change like the stuff. Happens all the time. It's easy to get yourself back from a crash with Houdini, especially the Linux shell or whatever. It's pretty handy because you have all the information, just copy and paste it or whatever. All right. So now we have this growing pattern that's broken up. Steve's fabulous suggestion of attribute noise, kind of more of like an ink spreading or infection or whatever. It's not just the perfect radius or circle or whatever. It always looks a bit boring or uninteresting or whatever. Kind of like too procedural or too perfect. You just can break it up with this noise. Maybe if I keep adding more layers of subdivision, it just gives you more of a resolution to you just add roughness here. It could really start to break up the edges a little bit. And then I think right here, if you multiply the distance by, yeah, so that's what I was just going to talk about. If you multiply this distance by a value, you can change the range of transition. So like 0 and 1. And then this is a more harsh value. I might have to do another. I think I need to multiply this at a different place to compensate. Let me try this. So my, just call this bandwidth. Whoops. All right. Maybe 0.5. So I think if I divide this by the bandwidth, but I think I have to do a similar thing and maybe multiply the time by the bandwidth. Might have to just divide both of them by it. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to do. So basically this is now a nice way to control the distance or the blending range. So we could hook this up now and visualize it with the Pactolimbic and see what happens. We probably want to, instead of geometry on the surface, you just want to scatter points. So we have like points to feed into the copy stop instead of, right now it would do this regular grid pattern. But I can just scatter points, blowing several minds today. This is the Vex plunging people into the river of maths. So if I scatter the points after this distance, then they'll inherit the distance value. So the rest of my functions and everything will still work because it's all based off of that distance value. And then I probably want to do these same operations here. This was random n direction. And then this is the up direction. And then we're just swapping n with up. You do this at any point in the chain. You should be able to plug it in here. And then could just keep using this age attribute. And over here, instead of color, can just be writing this blending to age now that we have a good sense of what it's doing. We should be still in action. Could change that stuff. We have a pretty cool kind of growing animation. Looks like my distance value is like a bit scuffed after a certain range. It might be this somehow it's running out of distance. I think it's this clamp that I was doing here. Like, I want to move that. All right. So I think what I want to do is I don't want to do the fit function. Oof. Ran into an issue here. Let me just walk back a little bit. So the distance, get our spreadsheet back up. The distance is unbounded. It's going above 0 to kind of infinite or whatever. This stuff should be good because we're still unclamped at this range. Let me try this a different way. I think it's possible what I want to do is like negative distance plus time. Something's a bug. We have a bug afoot. So I'm just maybe gonna go back to visualizing stuff with the color. Just set it to the value of the age. Reboot maybe? It's possible. I think right now the error is probably on my on my end than Houdini's end. But take a look. I'm gonna turn off that visualization. It's possible I want to clamp the age just to make sure it doesn't that could be like something that's throwing it off. Just clamp it between 0 and 1. I could leave the color visualization on right now or whatever. I think that was it. Maybe just use the output mask toggle in the node, the mask is remapped between 0 and 1. Yeah, I think I was doing unbounded. I think just maybe the ABC file path was wigging out on me because I wasn't clamping, because I was giving it I was preserving the unbounded value for too long. Could try turning that off and checking. I don't know, it could have just been like a file cache issue or something. Either way, it seems to be working better now, but could have been a the feds were tampering with my session, tapping my session. But yeah, it seems to be working. So I could try just save this again, just keep overwriting it for version 2 because it's successful now. Looks like a cornfield. So yeah, I think with this scatter, I don't want to do this relax iteration. This is just a bit too clean. I could try maybe even more points. Could try, just gonna make my template squiggly thing a bit smaller. You could take a look with a ton of, should be a ton of points. I think we still have a, sometimes this ABC stuff gets a bit, you just have to like refresh the viewport, I think. It's just classic Houdini, viewport being being mad. Yeah, you could randomize p-scale as well, so just keep a good chain going. This kind of stuff is similar to p-scale. Make sure you're doing one dimension when you do it. Could do custom ramp if you want like more small ones, some big ones or something like that. Maybe the majority of them are the full height. Could make sure you don't have any at 0 or like invisible as well. The smallest will be at 0.2 p-scale. But yeah, we should be able to, you just put that on. Should be able to maybe do a flip book and see how well this viewport stuff holds up. Let's try that kind of framing. Oh my god. I don't think it's working. Okay, it seems to be going now. Looks like the viewport is not enjoying it. So you could do just to unpack at the end. Might be making too much geometry. So I'm just gonna kind of convert this plant right here to a lower point count. Kind of cut it in a quarter or something like that. And then I can cash it out again. Let's see if this works a little bit better. It's like 2 million points. So I think it's just an issue with the Houdini viewport. Using a renderer, like that's automatically updating or retrieving the information. Try creating a new scene view. You could try it. I think it's going to be somewhat persistent. I think it's pretty borked on their end somewhat. Oof. There's a ton of geometry. I might just turn down the scatter to visualize stuff. So I'm just gonna visualize it unpacked. It's gonna be a little slower. But that should make sure the animation plays back. It just kind of forces it to reload or recache the viewport every frame. It's kind of like making it, ensuring that it's like time dependent or whatever. But it's a bit slower because it has to like dereference or unpack all of that geometry, like 1 million points or something like that every frame. But yeah, hopefully the the viewport will be better one day. I'm not well enough versed with karma and all that stuff, but it's possible switching over to like this USD like stage view with Hydra. Those kind of mechanisms are better built to handle Alembic and varying attributes, like varying ABC frame parameters. It's possible with Redshift, do instancing. Could try doing this with packed primitives and see if they're supporting packed Alembics. And take a look. That could be faster. We could see here it's starting to actually work. Let me do it with Redshift. So we'll leave this as packed Alembics. Just gonna save it again. Under the Redshift object, if you do instancing top level packed primitives, I don't know if I can do strands. Do both of them. We'll see how much stuff we can break. Just make a camera, maybe make a dome light, and see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't seem to like the ABC frame file path. So the other thing I was thinking was just get rid of that stuff. Do we go to a stage view? Oof. Something's not. Oh, okay. So I think up here I can go to a I have to make a the karma view, or this one should transition over to it, right? Maybe I just had to go back to this one. All right. Try this. SOP import. Maybe I want to do. I think I should be able to do it with this. Just get the geo one. So now this is using, can use karma. Ooh. Thinking about it. Got something. So I think it's drawing each point as a, ooh. Looks like the storm didn't like that. Let me try one more thing. Just gonna try a flipbook using the stage view, but still with the default viewport. Let's see if that works. I might wrap it up for today after that. Karma is a bitch. Well, yeah, I don't know. With karma, it seemed like it was kind of working, but it was just drawing the points as disks. It was like maybe it was just missing a width attribute or something. We'll go back into the stage view and make sure we're in the Houdini GL. And we'll turn on the auto update. I just need to save this again. Just do a new version. So it will definitely work like this. I could try it with performing the flipbook at this stage viewer. Oops. See how well it works. So it seems a little faster maybe, but it still seems a little slow to like think about it, transfer it over to the viewport and everything. Maybe switching this to load as reference. This is still very slow. Yeah, it doesn't seem that helpful. This might be a little faster. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I don't know how it let me try maybe setting this back to the default expression. Just gonna get rid of the extra attributes as well. We don't need color, don't need age, don't need distance. Now we're just back to the pure point position and path. Yeah, it still seems a little buggy. I don't know if maybe switching to this GL renderer. Mantra. Let's see what happens with this. So it looks like mantras. Oh, let's switch to the redshift one. All right. This is working. It still seems a little slow to start up mantra every frame. I'm gonna try maybe creating the width attribute on the plant before I save it out. And then go into the stage view. And switch this to karma. So I think it was that width attribute that was causing everything to look super big, like it was discs or whatever. Let's see how quick this is for doing different frames. Oof. They got me. All right. So I might have to just look into what's the best way to oh no. Every method, every planet. Let's get this one back in here. Yeah, so there's some things that you could do, I think, to speed it up. I'm just gonna build out something pretty quickly to just brute force it with the viewport, and then that will be it. for today. We'll go to save this thing, this behemoth. Just keep making more versions. So dereferencing it will force it to load for sure. But there's some smart things that I can do right here to speed things up. So we're shoving everything into the age attribute that's going from 0 to 1 to make the plants grow. So one thing I can do is a blast anything that has an age equal to 0, the point attribute. Just eliminate those points. Don't worry about them because it's just going to slow things down and they're not even contributing anything to the output visually. So this we'll do is cull age of 0. And then there's, I think, one more thing that I can do. Trying to think of like the least hacky way to do it. You could do a split, and then this one we'll do when the age is 1. Again, just make sure that's a point. Oh, the hell? Okay. I don't know how that happened. So when the growth is finished, this is gonna split off. So if I invert the range or the selection now, this is only going to be the growing or the animated growth points. So what I can do over here is get the geometry. I do. Just gonna set this frame to be 24. So this should always be at the end position unless I'm explicitly updating it or changing it. So I can do another copy to these points that are just going to pop in or load the final ones after they're finished growing. And then with this chain, I think we really want to make sure it's updating every frame. Then I can unpack. So it's going to be slow, but it won't be unpacking everything or dereferencing everything. So I can merge these results, maybe just doing Control-click on the template to do a shaded view. I could probably even get the mountain back. So have the transition unpacked, dereferenced, the ungrown, the age of 0 is cold to optimize that step, and then anything that's completed its growth is just going to grab the static, and it's not going to try to update the intrinsic or anything like that. So let's see. Speed run. Let's go. Look at that, we're getting like 1 FPS. So we sped it up quite a bit there. Vegan Nuts, how's it going? We're getting to the end of this. Better than before, at least. Yeah, I think, I mean, part of it with the instancing and updating that, I think in general it's a good idea to be smarter about it than like sending everything to the renderer. So even the stuff in Karma and all that should be quicker with this method now. But yeah, in general, I think it's instancing plat growth. Yeah, so I was just making with the find shortest path node and some other stuff, baking out a little animation of this seaweed stuff growing. And then using the alembic frame intrinsic, updating that. A smooth step. Yeah, I think it does look like the hide, the abrupt stop of it. Love the problem solving. This is what Houdini people are good at, because they always encounter so many problems. Mummy returns. Yeah, I don't know, for a bunch of different stuff. Could be useful. I don't know how these ones got below. I think I realized what happened. So before I bake this out, I just want to make sure it's above the ground or the origin. I was missing the top of it. If you just set the Y to minimum, then it will place it above. You're able to modify it. Yeah, so it's a packed alembic. So you're able to modify that attribute of it. So with this one, I'm just doing set prim intrinsic and updating the ABC frame intrinsic with my custom age or custom attribute. So that's changing that stuff. Yeah, it's a cross between a gem and a hack, maybe. This seems like it's causing some issues with the Houdini viewport. All right. So now they're above the ground.
Welcome to the internet.
And then I think right here, what I can do is the smooth step. You could do it, I think, after it's clamped, right? Maybe instead of clamping it. Just smooth. 0, 1. Let's see if it works. Like going from frame 96, 145. Smooth the value to the min and the max. You might be right. I thought it was this way. I think it's kind of a gotcha, but I'm not 100% sure. So I've always thought that it was like this amount is your range of min and max. I think it's just laid out a little bit. Yeah, the Vex is just always a little kind of gotcha or whatever. Let's see if it. So yeah, that is a really good suggestion from Steve. So it just, instead of seeing that abrupt end at the top, what it does is it's kind of like a S curve that accelerates and deaccelerates the start and the end, so you see less like abrupt end of the growth. But yeah, I think just going between Vex and Vops with it is what makes it misleading. Smooth step, yeah, in GLSL or HLSL or whatever, it's an Unreal shader graph or whatever is smooth step. But yeah, if you look at it here, oh, I guess even here it's laid out like that. So it's just a bit of a gotcha, is going between GLSL or whatever. But yeah, It's not dumb. This is a classic. It gets me all the time. So yeah, sorry, it got a bit buggy with the display, how that happens, but at least it's a little bit quicker to visualize stuff. This could make it a bit easier to run with different renderers. Like if this is always going to be just instanced static geometry, this will be unpacked, like deforming. You could kind of keep it pretty low. Could probably push this a bit higher if we really wanted to. Let me see what I can do here. Get the wire width down. It's just doing a full blast. So yeah, it's even with ton of geometry. I forget, what is this? 27,000 little plants, little growing plants. The hacks we added. Seems to be playing back in 1 FPS approximately. But yeah, I don't know, there's portions of this setup you might be able to hack or reappropriate into other methods or other ideas you have, but in general this is a really cool way to do a ton of, it's useful in like almost every effect is this, just the distance along geometry portion of it, and doing the growth, proximity, like expanding mask. Really useful for, I think I did it with that pyramid a while back with the pyro, the triangle, like smoke shooting off of it. Pretty cool. But yeah, just building things that are somewhat interactive or responsive, whatever you want to call it. Super useful to try to find the best, like the quickest feedback, because then you can spend so much more time like making the animation aspect of it interesting. I could like paint areas of this and have it like really art directable, where it spreads faster through like canyons, or I don't know, mess around with attributes and curvature or height, altitude, and do different stuff. Basically, the quicker and more responsive you make your systems, the more time you'll like enjoy spending on finessing it and getting it to look good. But if I wasn't like hacking this visualization and it was like a minute per frame or whatever to update the viewport or buggy, like it just gets frustrating and you give up on stuff quicker or whatever. So I don't know, some words of wisdom. Pretty cool. Yeah, so that's probably going to be it for today's scriptures. Sunday, Vex Day. Looks like it's frosting over. Yeah, it could be cool to maybe lower the camera like to a macro angle. Just gonna bail out of that flipbook. So yeah, if you lower the camera or something like that and have like some focal plane nonsense or something like that happening, probably get a pretty interesting. But yeah, I guess with the sticks, it does look like morning dew or frost or something like that, going like freezing the mountains going into the winter time. But yeah, we'll put the file, the hacked result of the file, on the Discord. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their weekend, the Sunday. We'll be back on Wednesday. All right, have fun.